start considering what I believe to be one of the most critical issues in our current state of affairs, and that is living in a manner worthy of the gospel. Paul wrote this in Philippians chapter 1, verse 27 and 28. He wrote this, "Just one thing, live your life in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. Then whether I come and see you or am absent, I will hear about you, that you are standing firm in one spirit, with one mind, working side by side for the faith that comes from the gospel, not being frightened in any way by your opponents." Now, at first blush, you might wonder, why would something like this have needed to be written in those days to followers of Jesus? And why would we need to attend to something like this today? Well, first of all, let's set the stage historically. The people to whom Paul addressed in this letter lived in a city that was quite prosperous, and its citizens were, by association, citizens of Rome itself. And they were proud to be Romans. They dressed like Romans. They talked like Romans. They acted like a Roman, walked like a Roman. Now, while that might strike a familiar chord with many of us who are proud and patriotic Americans, we need to remember that historically it was under the rule of Rome that the crucifixion of Jesus took place. And it appears that this might have had something to do with Paul's writing of this letter. In fact, we might be able to draw a couple inferences from this passage to reflect on in our own lives today. You see, initially, after detailing some things in this letter about his own situation in prison for preaching the gospel and encouraging these readers not to be disheartened because of his imprisonment, Paul called them to literally imitate him. He told them to conduct themselves in a manner worthy of the gospel and not be frightened by those who oppose them. Well, what this tells us, if not anything else, is that following Jesus was unpopular and difficult in the historical context. He went on also to exhort them to stand firm in one spirit, contending as one man for the faith of the gospel. Now, obviously, this could only mean that disunity or divisiveness was indeed a threat to their community and to the communication of the gospel. Now, does any of this sound relevant in our lives today? Can our political or national interests or loyalties create difficulty for us as followers of Jesus? Can our social values or personal or religious traditions produce conflict in our churches and diminish our witness of the gospel? Well, sadly, the answer is obviously yes. And unfortunately, the reality in many of our church settings and communities today mimics that very reality. And that brings us to Paul's exhortation to his readers 2,000 years ago and to the relevance of that same exhortation to us today. He wrote in another translation, it says it this way, "Whatever happens, conduct yourselves worthy of the gospel." The implication is this: when lockdowns occur, or when lockdowns are unexplainably lifted, or when your candidate wins or your candidate loses, or when your loved one gets sick, or even worse, when your loved one dies, when masks are being worn, or when masks are not being used, conduct yourself in a manner worthy of the gospel. Now, it's a tall order, to be sure, but make no mistake about it, it's one of eternal impact. And we'll consider how to do this in talks to come. But today, let it suffice for us to consider if we are willing to do it at all. As one theologian of a generation ago put it, how then, my friends, shall we now live? May we be those who live worthy of the gospel, whatever happens. That's my hope and prayer for us, for you, my friend. God bless you. Love you. See you soon.